Welcome back to All the Cars I've Loved Before, your authoritative podcast on automotive nostalgia, where our guests are unique. Each auto has an era, and every car tells a story. So, you know what time it is? It's time to plug back in, get a little grease under our nails, and slip into our favorite car themed t shirt, hat, or jacket. And I want to welcome everybody in listener land back to our podcast. Obviously, if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I am not the normal voice you hear coming in. It's me, Dave, coming back for another guest host appearance. And I was given the honor of doing our opening section. So today I want to say hello and welcome. And our lovely friend Doug is with us. And I want to pass it along to Doug because we're going to talk about some stuff that has happened since the last podcast with new listeners from different areas. We are reaching new corners of the world, and Doug has that stuff in front of him. So, hello, Doug. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing great. Great to be back here, Dave. Really appreciate you coming back. I think you were season 5, episode 6 was your episode, I think.
Yeah, I know it was season 5, but I don't remember off
Yep.
the top of my head what the episode was.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. No, it's great to have you back. I really appreciate you being a guest host yet again. While Christian takes care of some personal stuff that he's got going
Yeah.
on.
Well, I am
So,
just honored to be here with you because
yeah.
I really do enjoy this podcast and I love talking to people. So this gives me a wonderful outlet to sit here and jabber my jaw with you and new people that I get to meet. So I'm excited
Hmm.
about our guest today. Sorry, little throw in
Yeah.
there. Excited to talk to
No.
our guest today. But of course, we want to at least say hello to you and our listeners and
Yeah.
everybody that's joining us today.
Yeah, and just a couple new locations, and I will mention the downloads that they picked. Just happens to be
Absolutely.
just two wood episodes, but in terms of new locations, actually, to back up, we have been heard in 78 countries and territories, 953 cities, and new locations include Hampton, New Hampshire, Sterling, Colorado, Carlsbad, California, and Merrickville, Ontario. Thank you, Ontario. And just two episodes that highlight from those locations. One was about what a 1928 Ford Model A and McPherson College's restoration program taught students about classic car culture. Um, it's an excellent episode. We've done a few with different colleges. This one was with McPherson College. They're the only college in the country that with a automotive restoration program that is 4 years. Other colleges, including Weber State, has a automotive 4 year program. McPherson's is specifically around auto restoration, and this is a great episode. Student teacher Cash being the student, and Chris being the teacher. We asked them, who's your favorite student teacher pair? And that's who we ended up with. And what a great episode. These guys talk about their daily drivers, Model Ts, Model As. You know, who does that? So, and the other episode, one of my favorite ones, and Dave, I think you and our guest would love it. We talked about JDM import secrets from Japanese auctions. Our guest Mohammed talked about Skyline GTRs, Supras, RX-7s, and just explained the whole process for importing JDM, something you and our guest have some experience with.
Yeah, actually, and I enjoyed both of those episodes myself when I listened to them. The McPherson teacher and student, I think that was one of the first podcasts that I actually did have to look up some cars that they were talking about because
Hmm.
some of the obscure 1900 vehicles that they were talking about, I was like, "Yep, I have no idea what that looks like," and it was so. Even as a car guy, hearing these like dream cars that I've never even heard of, and then looking at them and going, I 100% understand why that's a dream car because they were gorgeous. And then hearing them talk about their Model A's and Model T's, and that
Hmm.
even I'm so sorry, his name is escaping me, but the one gentleman's daughter rebuilt her own
Oh,
um, you know,
Chris. Yep.
yeah, Chris, sorry. So Chris is talking about his daughter rebuilding her own Model T. That's amazing. I love to hear
Yep.
that there's younger generations getting into car repair, car restoration, and just cars in general, because I'm a huge car nut, as you can see. So
Yeah, yeah. Chris is awesome. He teaches some really interesting classes, including automotive history and how to learn about your car, where it's been owned, where it's been, where it was manufactured, the options. Like that just blew me away.
that
And
and
he grew up with a Model T from his family,
he
and he's
he
got his own, his daughter, like you were
he already
saying.
knew the story of the first continental crossing to the name
Yep,
of the gentleman that did the doctor that did it. He finished your story, which was like this guy, he knows what he's talking about. So like if he
yep.
was teaching me history, I would be all ears.
Yep, yeah.
I'm a little jealous I didn't get to interview him because I would have had
Yeah, it's a
a lot of
great
questions.
program. McPherson College in sorry, I always say it wrong. It's actually McPherson College
McPherson.
in McPherson, Kansas. Really great program, and they also have some summer programs for adults like ourselves that I may take an engine rebuilding class. They have painting, they have metal repair, wood repair, you name it. So hoping to do one of those this summer. But that's a great episode for others, the JDM episode that we talked about. And Dave, real quick, what do you have going on in the background there? You have your little
My little
Volkswagen
Volkswagen shrine, as I like to call it.
shrine. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so my love for everything air-cooled Volkswagen. I do actually have, I was noticing the other day that everything that I have in here is air-cooled except for one um, Beetle, which I don't know if you can see. It's right at the tip of my finger. It's a cop car. It's the new style Beetle, but I think that's the only non-air-cooled Volkswagen that I have around me. But I started collecting die casts and everything memorabilia wise when it came to Volkswagen when I bought my Volkswagen back when I was 17, so 20-ish. We'll say 20-ish. I don't want to feel as old as I am. Um,
Hmm.
20-ish years ago, and I never stop. And it's just I keep piling on. And my wife, she's very endearing when it comes to this stuff, to the point where she'll point out cars when we're out in the store and say, "Do you have that?" And I'll say yes or no. Um, but every time she comes in here, she goes, "There's just too much stuff," and then walks out. But this is my office. This is my
Yep.
play zone. So I appreciate that she puts up with me at least a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to
Exactly.
talk about what I'm looking at on my screen, and that is John's man cave.
Yeah.
I see
Well,
a beautiful set of toolboxes and a wonderful TV. It looks like a place that I would have a very good time hanging out. And now I'll pass that on to Doug to introduce
yeah.
our wonderful guest this evening.
Yeah. Well, so John, and I'll let John do most of the honors. I met John through a local Cars and Coffee, one that he and I think a friend and or a brother started, and it just really grew. I think the last time I was there, there were about 400 cars, and I believe it's called Kent Island Cars and Coffee. Correct, John?
That is
And
correct. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And John, yeah, introduce yourself. Obviously, you're in Maryland, but tell us about yourself, and then we'll hop in the time machine and talk about your early cars and how it got you all the way to running your own car show, amongst other things.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. This is really exciting. I've never been on a podcast before, so it's definitely a unique experience for me. But yeah, this is so. I guess my name is John. Obviously, I live over here on Kent Island, which is in Maryland, right by Annapolis. For those who aren't, kind of familiar with the area, but I'm a huge car guy, right? So, my personal goal is to own, experience, and modify as many unique cars as possible. And as cliche as it sounds, my interest of cars stemmed from the Fast and Furious, right? So prior to that movie coming out, my brother and I, we were very much so into art and things like that. And when the movie came out, it kind of opened our eyes to the automotive culture, specifically car modifications, right? We kind of view modifying cars as a form of art, because if you think about it, when you buy a vehicle and it's in its factory form, right, that's your blank canvas, and then everyone can kind of add their own touches to it and make it their own. So I absolutely love all cars. I am not as familiar with the older classic cars. I think that they're cool, and if they look cool, I definitely point it out. But I'm not as familiar with the older classic cars. But absolutely love cars, and I am here, yeah, in my garage, and this is my also my kind of man cave, I guess you could say, because I do live in a townhome, and there's not a ton of different places. So actually, it's not always this clean. Don't think that it's always like this. But my wife and I spent probably the last 5 days going through and just kind of decluttering, just because I usually when I get stuff, I'll modify it. And usually if I replace a part, if it's not bad, I'll hang on to it because I see some degree of value to it. And 5 years later, you have a garage full of stuff. So
Hmm.
we recently went through that, and it was tough to throw away a lot of brand new parts and things like that. But I pretty much asked myself when I looked at a part, do I need this? Yes or no? If it's not yes, then it's like getting rid of it. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess you could say, the short and sweet of an intro.
Cool. So my when you're talking, the first question that came to mind for me
Hmm.
is,
Hmm.
so you love doing the modifications. What is your favorite thing? Like when you see, if people are an understanding of my language, when you see a vanilla car,
Hmm.
especially
Hmm.
when it's a car that has so much potential, what's your
Yeah.
first go-to thought process when it comes to how you want to modify it?
Well, so for me, I will say I don't like to have the same stuff as everyone else, right? You want to
Okay.
be unique, right?
Yeah.
But I can't afford a super crazy exotic car. So my way of standing apart is through modifications, right? And the approach that I take, it really kind of depends on the application, right? You don't want to overdo a car. You got to kind of I take a look at it, and then one of the first things I do is like suspension and wheels. Like, to me, from a cosmetic standpoint, I think the stance of a car can definitely make or break the aesthetics of it.
Yeah,
So
no, I
that's
I
yeah,
feel you
that's
on that.
usually for me.
Okay. Are you like a severe cam guy, stance guy, or are you
No,
just
you
a
know what?
lower and sleek looking guy?
I'd say lowering sleek the camber thing. It's just not for me.
I
But
I don't quite my personality, I don't quite
yeah,
understand it myself. Not to
yeah.
say that people, like
Hmm.
I've seen some cool cars that make it look better than other cars, but from
Hmm.
a functionality standpoint, I just
Oh
can't
yeah,
I can't bring myself to be like, "Oh yeah." You know what I mean?
yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. I'm not gonna lie. I went through a phase one time. I did have a car. It was like a '04 Acura TSX, and factory lip kit on it, and it was on coilovers, and I put some like Enki RPF ones on it in a finish called SBC, which is like a black chrome. But they came off like a 350Z, and in order to get the fitment on that car to work, you had to stretch the tires and camber the wheels out. And I mean, this thing was an inch off the ground, maybe that.
Wow.
Um, and it was so low that I live in a new construction community, so like there is a slight incline to my driveway, and it was so low that the previous owner had put like quick disconnects on the front bumper so you could quickly pop the bumper off if you
Wow.
come across an obstacle. And I
Yeah.
remember, I think maybe my first week of doing that, I'm like, dude, I'm like 30 something years old, and I'm taking the front bumper off my
Just to get
car.
in your
What am I
driveway.
doing here? Yeah, just to get it in and
Yeah.
out. And I'm like, well, yeah, what am I doing here? So it was cool for the experience to be immersed in that community for a little while, but it's definitely not for me. I just like a clean, tastefully modded car. But taste is subjective, right? So for me, I just prefer a clean street car.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
One more question before we get into the time machine and go way back. I do
Hmm.
want to know what got you into the cars and coffee scene to the point that you kind of started one. What
Hmm.
was the driving force for that? Because there's not a lot of people out there that want to take on the responsibility of making a cars and coffee kind of event take place, especially not like spearheading like you have. And what,
Hmm.
what was the driving factor for that for you?
No, that's a great question. So, as I mentioned, my brother and I, we got into cars when we were younger. Fast and Furious came out, things like that. And this area that I live in on Ken Island, my parents used to own a convenience store gas station, maybe 15 minutes away from where my house is now. And when my brother and I were growing up, it was kind of like we had cars that were kind of rivals. Like I had a seventh gen Celica, he had a Acura
Nice.
RSX, right?
Oh, nice.
And yeah, and he would host car events underneath the Kent Narrows Bridge, and like just a gathering. It started with mainly Club RSX, and we would all meet under the Narrows, hang out, and then we would go for a cruise. We'd do video, and then we would take everyone back to our parents' gas station. And we would get what we would call them JDM wings, which was kind of dumb, but they were just like orange wings, like the color of them look orange.
Yeah.
Is I guess it's like a brownish color, but we would do that. It was just a really good time, and people look forward to that like every year. And I feel like there came a point in this area where there were just enough that there were a lot of car people that I would meet, but there were just no events going on in the area, and it was kind of sad, right? As a car person, as an enthusiast, just to be, feel like you have to travel to Great Falls, Virginia, or go to Hunt Valley, and those aren't bad places to go. For me, it's at least an hour for either place. So I thought to myself, why not bring something here home, close to home? And that's where I was doing one I called Classic, and that one I did that when I started that was on Tuesdays.
Okay.
Every other Tuesday from 5 to 7 or 6 to 8, depending on daylight savings time, things like that. And then I think it was last year or 2 years ago is when I started Ken Island Cars and Coffee. Um, and, I can kind of, I don't know if you want me to go into that now, as far as like how that even started and how it came about. But I can just tell you.
Yeah,
Um,
please
Yeah.
do. Please do.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. So, Ken Island Cars and Coffee, as I mentioned, I at first I started doing one at Cold Classic Brewing Company, and that one was like every other Tuesday, just to give people to look forward to something during the week. But then I thought to myself, if you guys are familiar with Katie's Cars and Coffee or Hunt Valley, in season, Katie's, you got to get there. I mean, 5 a.m., to get a decent parking spot. And for me, that means I got to get up, around 4 a.m. or so,
Yep.
and start my loud car up in my townhome community. And it's just like, man, this isn't cool. Like once you get to Katie's, it's a very unique atmosphere, and I love that. And I thought to myself, I would love to do a Cars and Coffee, but I don't know where to do it here on the island or locally. So one of my friends was visiting from Virginia, and there is this kind of like bougie barbecue place that's in a business park, maybe 2 miles from my house. It's kind of a hidden gem called Bark Barbecue. And my friend from Virginia had never had it before, so we went there one morning and got a delicious brisket burrito. It was awesome. And as I'm standing there
Mm.
in line waiting for the
I know.
food, I'm looking around like this place is awesome. And just the atmosphere is so cool. Like when you're in the building and it's very like kind of modern looking on the inside, but like right across the entrance is like a building. It's got wood stacked on the side, and that's where they're smoking all the meats and everything. So I was like, this seems like a really cool place to do cars and coffee. So I asked to speak to the manager and just kind of introduce myself, and you know uh, throughout this idea, of potentially doing this car event, right? Like right there on a whim. And she said, "Oh, the owner would have to make that decision, but he's not here right now." And I said, "All right, no problem. Do you know when he would be in? And maybe I can stop back in another time." And he actually pulled up, and then we just had the conversation right then and there.
Hmm.
And I mean, after that conversation, he was on board. So that is kind of how it started.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it was kind of funny how like everything kind of just fell into place.
And I know this is a car podcast, but that brisket
Hmm.
burrito sounds
Oh my
amazing.
gosh, dude, it is
Uh,
fantastic. I mean,
I'm a
all their
car guy,
food
but I'm
is
a
so
foodie
good.
too. Oh,
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, because some people are like, you're having a cars and coffee at a barbecue place, but I mean, they have fantastic coffee as well,
Yep.
and they do fresh pastries and things like that. It is great place here on the island.
well,
Yeah.
that
And
is awesome.
how long ago did Ken Island Cars and Coffee? When did you have your first event at Bark Barbecue?
I want to say it was maybe March of 2023.
Okay. Wow, it's been going on
Yeah.
that long. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I will tell you this. I actually took a break after the first year because at first I was doing this by myself.
Hmm.
I do have a family. I have two young kids, wife, and we between our 9 to 5 jobs, I was doing all these different events, and I think I kind of burnt myself out, to be honest. So I ended up taking a
Yep.
break from hosting. But coming into this year, one of my best friends, who also lives in Easton, had offered to kind of step in and really help me manage this. So I have a couple other guys that now run the Cult Classic event for me, the one that's every other Tuesday, and they have their friends involved, and they're all collaborating really well. So I'm just letting them run with that, and my full focus is Ken Island Cars and Coffee.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, highly recommended. Besides having some special events where you had a BMW event, if I remember, you had a
Mhm.
JDM event.
Mhm.
You had different sections where you had the exotics, right?
Mhm.
Japanese cars, just a bit of everything, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I saw second gen MR2 there that I was in love
Mhm.
with, Corvettes, of course, electric
Mhm.
cars, DeLoreans, of course. You name
Yeah.
it, they were there. NSX, man, there was a beautiful NSX there the one day, and it was parked right
Mhm.
in front of Bark's barbecue door.
Oh yeah, I think
Yeah,
that was Brian, our buddy Brian over in Delaware. Yeah, very,
yeah,
very nice. I think it was an NA2, the one with the stationary headlights. I
yep,
love the
yep,
NSX.
yep,
Probably my favorite
yeah,
JDM car. Yeah.
yep. Ditto, ditto.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, before we hop in and go back in time in the old DeLorean time machine, I do have one more question, and that
Yeah.
it has to do with the cars and coffee. As of
Hmm.
we're recording this, we are in the late 2025.
Hmm.
So do you have a projected first cars and coffee for 2026 season?
Not yet. That is something that my partner and I still have yet to discuss. But usually we started around March, and then we run it up until about October, November.
Okay, cool.
So that would be the plan. But usually we like to just sit down, revisit things, and come up with a game plan and try to be as organized as possible. Um, for our events.
And the to follow up with that,
Hmm.
when you have a date, how can
Hmm.
myself and also our listeners find out of the information? Where do they find you? Plug yourself a little bit, man. You're here. So
Yeah, no, I
plug your
appreciate
cars and coffee. Let's make it the biggest on the
it.
mid-Atlantic.
No, I love that. No, I really appreciate it. So, to stay up to date with our events, if you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram, that is usually where we post everything.
Perfect.
And the Facebook and Instagram is just Ken Island Cars and Coffee.
Okay.
And that's usually where we do it. Um, I think part of the plan coming into the next year is maybe doing like when we come up with our schedule for the year, is kind of posting that at Bark Barbecue, since that's usually the venue. So for those people who don't have social media, completely understand that. So they can be up to date, and also if people reach out to me and they have an email address or something like that, I do keep a running list of just individual people that I'll send it to. I won't spam everyone, but if people ask to be notified of the events, I'm happy to do that as well.
Well, I hope that we
Perfect.
can, between me and
Mhm.
Doug, we'll make sure that there's links in the show notes.
Yeah,
And anybody that's
absolutely.
listening that does isn't looking at them, Kent Island, KENTISLAND, Cars and Coffee. I was personally asking for myself because I'm gonna come to Cars and Coffee and I'm gonna get one of those brisket burritos, not
Oh
cooked.
yeah.
But that takes us to the next part of that show, where part of
Hmm.
our show rather, where we like to toss it to Doug, and he's gonna hop in his DeLorean, and we're gonna go way back. So, Doug, take it
All
away.
right.
Yeah, yeah. So, John, in keeping the theme of the show to all the cars I've loved before, what was your first car and how did you get it?
Oof. Wow. So my very first car was a 1987 Cavalier Z24.
Mm,
I honestly don't even remember how I happened upon that car. I will tell you, it's not something that was like, man, I want an '89 Z24 Cavalier. It was more like when I had that car. It was around the time of Fast and Furious coming out. And I will say, with it being your first car, you do experimenting, right? There are some things that I've done in that car that were questionable, but you play around with modifications, right? Like, I'll never forget the modifications that I did to that car. Decals everywhere, big aluminum wing on the rear, trunk. I bolted a monitor to the dash. I had a PS1 in the glove box.
Yes.
It was the most decked out '89 Cavalier that no one asked for. But you know what? It was my first car and it was cool. I There will always be a place in my heart when I see that generation Cavalier or Beretta,
mm,
where I'm like, those cars are awesome, in
Yeah.
their own way. They're just cool.
Like we say,
yeah,
every car has a story. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for 100%.
yeah,
Go ahead, Doug.
yeah. Yeah, no, and just from my memory, right,
Mm-hmm.
that car was a coupe, right? It had a
Mm-hmm.
probably had a V6, maybe a 3.1 V6,
Uh, 2.8 multi-port fuel
2.8.
injected.
Yep,
Yeah, it had
yep,
those
sounds
checkerboard
right.
wheels. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep, yep,
remember those too.
yeah. Is it automatic or stick, John?
It was automatic. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
think many of us, our first cars were automatics, and if you were like me, and then I met somebody who had a stick shift car, I'm like, that's where I'm going.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So much more fun.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So, you had that car throughout part of high school, all of high school.
I had that for a good part of high school pretty early
Hmm.
on. And then I think my parents like my older brother better because what would happen is they
Mm.
would they would get him a car and he would modify it, and when he was done, they would then give me the car to pay for, but let him pick a new one. It wasn't a choice. It was just like, hey, here's your car that you're going to be paying for now. So I think after the Cavalier, I had a V6 Mustang, 98, dark green tan top when we got it, automatic as well.
Hmm.
My brother did some pretty cool modifications to it. He, had the whole car painted Sonic blue, put a black top on it, Cobra bumpers, which
Nice.
was,
Yeah.
sacrilege probably to
Oh
put
yeah.
Cobra bumpers on a V6. But, it had a Flowmaster exhaust. I wasn't fooling anybody. And the
Yeah.
back seat had a subwoofer strapped to it, Soliberic, but
Seat
Yeah.
belted in.
yeah. But yeah, I had that car for a while. Pretty cool, unique. SN95 chassis, I think is what they call those
Yeah.
Mustangs. It was a 9098.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, it happened to me again.
Hmm.
Toyota Celica. I had a 2001 Toyota Celica GT that he had, modified all up, and then he moved on to the Acura RSX, and then I got the Celica, which that one I liked, and I
Gotcha.
didn't mind paying for that.
Yeah,
And
Um,
that's a
but
good.
the and the
mhm.
Celica was that the Jelly Bean era Celica or a little bit beyond that? Maybe that was the 90s. I called it the Jelly Bean because that's kind of what it looked like to me.
Yeah, I love that generation Celica, by the
Yeah.
way. So,
Yeah.
but no, it was the seventh gen. It was the one that looked really fast, like the commercial. If
Yes.
it parked on the street and somebody was walking by, the car's parked, and they walk by with their dog and they stop and yell or slow down, and it's not even moving. But yeah, it was the like 2000 generation. I think it ran from like 2000 to maybe 2007 or something like that. Don't quote me, but it had the headlights were more modern. They were more like triangular.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but
No,
but yeah, it was that
I do
generation.
remember that was the last generation, right? Celica.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Unless they bring it back. But
Yeah.
yeah, and before the show, we were
hmm
talking, and when you and I talked on the phone, speaking of cars, and I think people
Uh-huh.
love this story. I always think of the guy who starts with a pencil and he ends up with a Porsche, right? You did
Yeah,
this
yeah.
trading up thing during the pandemic, right? Can you tell us
hmm
about it? What inspired you? Obviously, we all had a lot of time on
hmm
our hands to be creative
Yes.
during the pandemic, but tell us where you started, where it took you, where you are now from that whole
Yeah.
process.
No, I would love to. So, 2000, it was maybe of 2020. I was in the market for a project car, or kind of a car to tinker with, and I was between like a 2001 Lexus IS 300. It wasn't necessarily in the best condition, but for $3,000, what would you expect? And I narrowed it down to pretty much either that, or I found this 1987 Mercedes 420 SEL, and it was black on black. And what made it really special to me was it had a Zender wide body kit on it. So, for those who aren't familiar with Zender, it was a
Hmm.
company back in that time, that made body kits, and the body kit included a replacement front bumper, rear bumper, door cap, side skirts, three-piece wing. It had the three-piece OZ AMG like hammer wheels on it. It looked fantastic, and
Hmm.
what also kind of spoke to me was growing up, my parents had some like older 80s Mercedes, and my mom had a black on black one. So it was kind of nostalgic for me. And
Hmm.
that is the route that I went. So that was kind of, the car that I went with for
Yeah.
my
And
budget.
that was
hmm
the 420 SEL, so that was a V8 and it was a large
hmm
coupe, right?
so it was a large sedan.
Sedan. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it was a big four door, black
Hmm.
interior, and with a car like that, in my eyes, it looked very good as it was, especially with the kit, especially with the wheels on it. And with every vehicle that I get, I kind of have a vision in mind of what I want it to be, and not really much had to be done with that car. So, um, in this garage, I do a lot of paint correction, and the process of paint correction is great because you're restoring the car's original paint, bringing it back to life. And I just did that to the car. I did some light window tint on it. Those cars have a known issue where like the plastic cog wheels in the odometer break, so it just stops
Hmm.
reading mileage until you get in there and fix it. And I kind of thought about, okay, from the factory, I know Blah Punked. I don't know if I'm saying that correct. I think they made the OEM
I think so.
radios and
Yeah.
some of them. So I went with a more modern version. Didn't look too flashy, but it just kind of was, it was period correct and kind of flowed with the rest of the car. But I think that was about all I got to do to it before I ended up trading it for the next car. So
Nice.
I don't know if you want me to run through them or if you want to ask
Yeah.
questions in between.
No.
Um,
No, let's go on to what the trade up was, right? And
Yeah.
just for everybody,
yeah,
right? The original budget was $3,000, right?
$3,000. Yep.
Yeah.
So then as I'm modifying this car and enjoying it, I share a lot of my progress through social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram. And when I got that car, a couple people messaged me and said, "Hey, let me know when you sell that one." So I'm like, "Yeah, no problem. I'll definitely do that." So wasn't really looking for anything else, but one of my friends at the time had come up to me and said, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a house. Do you think you could help me sell my car?" And I was like, "Sure. What do you have?" And he had I believe it was a 2008 BMW 335 Xi coupe. So for those who aren't familiar with that, so it's a two-door 335, has the N54, the twin turbo six cylinder, 300 horsepower, 300 torque from the factory. It was Alpine white, like a brown baseball glove interior, six-speed manual car. And he put a lot of money into it. So, a lot of cosmetic stuff, M-Tech bumper, the CSL trunk lid, side skirts, wheels, full bolt-ons. It was fantastic. So I said, yeah, I could absolutely help you. Why don't you bring it over and we'll look at it and figure out what you want to do with it. So he comes over. It had been a little while since we've seen each other, and we got very excited.
Mhm.
We ended up playing Xbox and eating hot wings and completely forgot about looking or talking about the car until he left. And I was like, we haven't even talked about your car. But, I was talking to him and asked what he was trying to get for it. And when he told me how much he wanted for it, I think he said he wanted like 5 grand. And I was like, are you sure? Because at the time, that car, with its mileage and everything that was done, I was like, I feel like this is probably worth like 15 or something. And he
Mhm.
said, well, for you, I'd sell it for 5 grand, but just know that it does need some work. He said that there's a big crack on the windshield, not a big deal. The biggest thing is the car would go into a limp mode under wide open throttle, mainly in third gear. First gear, fine. Second gear, fine. Third gear, it would go into limp mode, shut the turbos off, and the car wouldn't go past a certain RPM. He just couldn't figure out what it was. So I'm like, dude, if you want 5 grand, I will buy this car, for 5 grand. So I called the first person that reached out to me about the Mercedes.
Mhm.
His name is Jeb, and he owns a company called Wheels Up. And he said, "Yeah, I'm interested." He goes, "How much do you want?" I said, 5 grand, because a friend of mine is
Right.
selling a car for 5 grand, and I just want to get the car. Um, so it was actually on my birthday. I ended up bringing the car to a shop. He looked at it, bought it, and I just took the cash, gave it to my friend. So now I have this 335 Xi, very nice
Mhm.
car, and I start fixing it. So I replaced the windshield. I ended up finding out what that problem was. It was a boost solenoid. I didn't want to tell him that. He might be learning this now if he listens to this,
Yeah.
but there, it's a $75 part, and there's two of them. And
Oh,
Mhm.
I was like, I will replace both.
both
Replace
right?
both of
Go for
them,
it.
and it fixed it. It ran so good. And then from there, I was like, I think that the tuner he had on it was like a Cobb tuner. And I think it's okay for that motor, but I think there was a better, known brand, I guess. It was like MHD or something like that. So I ended up switching out the tuner. I also ended up upgrading the intercooler and doing stuff like that. And then once I got to a point where there was nothing left to change, I threw it out on the market. So pretty much, just to kind of take a step back here, my thought process, with wanting to own
Mhm.
and experience many different cars. Unfortunately, now I'm not at a place in my life right now where I can afford multiple cars. So it's I have to sell one in order to experience the other. So when I sell a car or trade a car for another, it's not that it's necessarily better. It's just I have to do it to experience the other, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right. No, it makes sense. And I mean, you're on to all the cars I've loved before, and we want to hear
Yeah.
about them all. So you're
Yeah.
you're our best guest with that kind of
Oh, thank you.
attitude, right?
No,
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate it.
You
Yeah.
bet.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I had the 335,
Okay.
and usually the point where I will put it out, is when there's nothing left for me to change, or I get to a
Hmm.
point to where I feel like I'm content, where like I don't need to change anything. And normally when I list it, I'll put a number to it, or I'll say I'm open to trades of comparable value, right? And I don't really specify anything, because then you're kind of limiting yourself as to the things that people could offer you. Um, So I ended up listing the 335. I was enjoying it, and I had a guy reach out to me from New York, and he said, "Hey, would you be interested in a trade?" And I said, "What do you
Oh.
have?" Right? So he said, "I have a 92 Nissan Skyline R32 GTST. So it's not a GTR. For those who
Hmm.
aren't familiar with the GTST, it's a RB20 DET. So it is a single turbo. It's rear wheel drive. It's 5-speed manual versus, 6-speed manual, twin turbo, all wheel drive. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Can you send me, photos, videos, details of it? And what I loved about it is he did put a lot of GTR aero on it. So I had a GTR front bumper, it had a GTR wing, and then otherwise it had like bolt-ons, very basic, just intake exhaust, right? Nothing crazy.
Hmm.
Um, and what's funny that you'll hear throughout this process is when it comes to selling cars, trading cars, in my experience, it's all about momentum. If you're feeling it, they're on board with it, you just got to jump on it, right? And a lot of our conversations usually, so I told him I was interested after he sent me all of the details. And then our conversation went from, hey, let's meet next weekend to what are you doing tomorrow?
Nice.
Yeah, so he ended up driving the car to me from New York. And that was fantastic because it told me a couple things. One, that he's serious, and two,
Hmm.
that the car can mechanically make it from New York to here, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
um, I will tell you prior to doing this car, I had never driven a right-hand drive car. So it was definitely intimidating because I was like,
Hmm.
I've never done this, but I'm gonna have to figure it out, you know? So surprisingly, it was a very easy transition. I'd say the two things for me that I had to get used to is instead of kind of hugging the center line, more hugging the shoulder when you're driving on the road. And then your turn signals and wipers, they are reversed,
Yep.
Yep.
right? Yeah,
Can
so that,
confirm.
yeah,
Yep.
So, yeah, everything checked out. With that guy, his buddy had just gotten an N54 car. That's what made him interested in, my car. And as soon as he drove it over, we drove each other's cars. Everything checked out, and signed titles over to each other, swapped keys, and we were on our way.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, the car had originated from a place in Virginia called Japanese Classics. I think that they're known as a pretty reputable importer overall. Um, they had some pretty clean JDM stuff there, and it was a very clean car, cosmetically speaking. So one of the first things I do, it's like day one paint correction, right? It's almost like the same thing, but it makes a big difference restoring the car's paint. And I did. Um, the paint correction, ceramic coating. Um, Cosmetically, I did like a carbon fiber gurney flap, carbon fiber front lip. My favorite wheel of all time. I am a T37 fanboy. I just love the style of that wheel. For those who aren't familiar, it's a 7-spoke Japanese lightweight forged wheel, right? And it just looks good on pretty much everything, in my opinion. But I got a set of those actually from a guy in New York. I should have just, asked this guy to pick him up on his way here, but I didn't know. But uh, literally, it was like the day after I did the trade. I went right back to New York to go get these wheels. They came off an Evo, and I put them on the car, and that's it. That's all that I pretty much did to that car, as I didn't feel like it needed a lot. It was a very clean driving car. So I had that for maybe 4 months.
Hmm.
And, once I did all those things to it, right, threw it out on the market, just, I think I forget the price I put on that car was like maybe 25 grand. And, I mean, we're, several months, or not several, but, we're months into it. We're still in 2020. So then I put it out there, and then I had another guy message me, local here in Maryland, and said, "Hey, would you be interested in a trade? What do you have?" You know?
The
So
million
he
dollar
said,
question. What do you got?
"Yes, what do you got? Sure. What do you have?" So he had a 2003 911 Targa 996.2. So not the runny egg headlight, right? Not the one that
Right.
has the the first generation of the 996, but the second generation.
Yep.
So I was like, that sounds very interesting. I back in when I was younger, I did have a Boxster, a 986. It was not an S, but you know, I don't know. I had that car. I put exhaust on it. I did a couple things. And while it was a nice car, I just did not feel really connected to it. So usually whenever I meet Porsche enthusiasts and people that own Porsches, they just love the cars. And while I felt like it was a nice car, nothing about that car specifically spoke to me. That was until I had a 911 and then I got it. But um,
Hmm.
so anyway, I ended up talking to the guy. It sounded like he does pretty much something very similar to me, where he likes to experience different stuff and he trades, but he has multiple projects that he is juggling at one time. Whereas for me, I just have one. So it was a 2003 996.2 911 Targa, and the Targa of that generation is not the Targa that I think of, like, for example, Mark IV Supra or a Del
Hmm.
Sol, or, something where you can remove the center piece of the top and put it somewhere. The Targa of a 996 is just glass. It's glass and it goes pretty much all the way back. Um, so very good looking car. I ended up talking to him, and he basically said that he picked up this car. It was a little project for him, but just needed things here and there. And, I said, well, how does your schedule look next weekend? He said, great. And we kept talking. And then it was
Hmm.
like, what are you doing right now?
Nice.
Once he told me where he was, I was like, I mean, you can come over. So he ended up making the drive over here. And, we ended up uh, driving each other's cars. I was kind of like skeptical because there was a lot of little things that weren't working, like the wiper motor. The rear wing was not coming up. You know how like those cars
Hmm.
have the little ducktail that
Yeah.
kind of comes
At
up after a
75
certain
miles
speed.
per hour. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. That wasn't working. So I was like, I don't know. But, he made the drive all the way out there. And also, I had never owned a 911 and I did like it. So yeah, we shook hands and I did the trade. So it was silver, black interior. It had a set of Fixie, Fikse wheels. And I
Hmm.
believe they were the FM10s. They were polished, looked really nice and clean. I think it was lowered. It had a muffler delete, and then it had a turbo nose on it, front clip. So, I mean, I thought that car was fantastic. I mean, soon as I got it, I did not jump into paint correction right away, but I
Hmm.
started to figure out what was going on with like the wipers and the wing. And usually when it comes to diagnosing, you start with the fuse box, right? Like that's one of the first
Yep.
places where it could be something as simple as that. And what I think happened is, maybe I know the car was sitting in storage for him and like the battery was disconnected. And I don't know if maybe he potentially put, the terminals on backwards or something, because
Hmm.
I could see it. It took me a while to figure out which one was positive and which one was negative. But, you know, I noticed that there were a bunch of fuses that were blown. So I went through, replaced them all, and everything worked. I was like, great.
Sweet.
Yeah, so the car ran and drove fantastic. Didn't need anything. And the only thing I did to it was like I did an arrow front lip. It looks a little more aggressive than the factory one. It's a little thicker,
Hmm.
and I had it color matched to the car. So um, I'm enjoying the car. I'm loving it, but uh, while I had that car, I will say that, through the Skyline community, I met a lot of people. And it was funny during the time that I owned my R32 Skyline, I, I would host like a Skyline meet. Like I put one together here on Kent Island. It was right at Rita's. And it was pretty cool because like it seems like people have them, but no one really wanted to take the initiative to put that together, right? Because it does require time and effort, and you have to kind of want it too, right? Like So during my ownership of the R32, I did meet a lot of people, and then I would get friend requests through Facebook, things like that. And one day I open up my Facebook, I'm just scrolling, and I guess somebody that I had met through the Skyline community posted a picture of his car. He had just washed it. And I was like, man, that would be so sick to own. And the car was a EV1 Lightning Yellow R34 Skyline GTT. So, like the GTST of the R32, it's not the GTR version. It's a 5-speed manual, RB25 DET, single turbo, rear wheel drive. Um, and I was like, what a dream. I mean, the R34 is like, well, I know for, as enthusiasts, usually to import cars over, it has to kind of fall within that 25-year range if you don't want to jump through all the hoops of, converting it over to meet, our standards here in the US. It seems like most people just kind of wait until, the car's grandfathered in or that 25-year mark to where you can bring it over
Hmm.
and you don't have to worry about that. And also tagging it, you can tag it as historic, so you don't have to really worry about, inspection or emissions. Um, so the car was here. I did not ask why, but I just was amazed to see an R34. And I said to myself, I wonder if he wants a 911. And I what I
Hmm.
the car was not for sale or anything like that. He just, washed it and shared a photo of it. So I just messaged him and I said, "Hey, I think we may have met through the Skyline community, but um, I noticed you posted your R34 recently. Thing is gorgeous. Would you be interested in a trade, right?" And surprisingly, he was like, what do you have?" And when I told him I had a 911, he said, "I used to own a 911 and I really enjoyed it."
Of
So then,
course.
right? So he was in Virginia Beach. We kind of just had a conversation, and seemed like he was on board. So I drove to him in Virginia Beach, and we traded cars. We traded the 911 Targa for this yellow R34 Skyline GTT. Um, surreal. It was a surreal moment to me. Again, Fast and the Furious, right? Paul
Hmm.
Walker. I think that was a hero car in. Was it Too Fast, Too Furious? The silver one
Yep.
with the blue
Yep.
livery.
Yep. Correct. Yep.
So funny enough, this guy was a fan of Fast and the Furious as well, and he had painted kind of like a livery very similar to that. But it was kind of strange because the car was yellow and the design that he put on there was like a brown color. It was like a light brown color. It's very unique. It was interesting to say the least. But either way, I was like, it's an R34. Who cares? Like I can always make adjustments as needed. You know when funds allow. So yeah, we do the trade, and I drive this car home and start getting to work on you know making it my own. So my vision for that car, for the Skyline, was to just make it look like a clean R34. So that included putting GTR bumpers on it, right? So just because I think that's a clean look, I know there are aftermarket companies that make kits, but I think the GTR is a very good looking car from the factory, and that's what I wanted. So I started the search for R34 GTR parts. Now, that was very challenging considering, these cars aren't technically supposed to be here. At the time, they weren't supposed to be here. So finding them was very challenging. And the people that do have them know what they have, and you're going to pay a premium. But I was able to source an OEM front bumper, side skirts, front lip, rear bumper, and then I had to go aftermarket for the side skirt extensions and the rear bumper extensions. So everything would be complete. Um, and the last component that I needed was a hood, because the OEM GTR front bumper has a different style than the GTT. So the way that the
Ah.
hood shuts requires modification. So like on a GTT, on the hood, there's like a slight lip in the center of it, and the
Hmm.
GTT bumper only comes up about 3/4 of the way. So when you shut the hood, that lip on the hood closes that gap,
Interesting.
versus the OEM GTR bumper is squared off in the grill, and the OEM hood is like straight across. So I was not able to find an OEM hood. I probably could not afford an OEM hood, so I went aftermarket, found a company called Cybon, which I think were, if you're familiar with aftermarket parts and carbon fiber, it's either, VIS or Cybon. And I placed the order for the hood, but it was on like a 12-week back order. So my vision for the car was to kind of put everything together and paint it one solid color, just yellow, because the jams and everything are yellow. I just didn't want that
Hmm.
livery on it because it was painted on. So I was pretty much at a standstill, slowly acquiring parts for this car to, kind of get the project to come alive. And Facebook's a very dangerous place, especially marketplace.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
100%. Can't agree with
just
that.
so. Excuse me. I open up my Facebook one day and go in a marketplace, and somebody has a Mark IV Supra listed. Very
Oh
clean.
boy.
Yeah, 93. It was not an original turbo, it was an NA, but it was repainted, freshly repainted, a very unique color. It was like a Chrysler color, actually, called Black Phantom, and it was a black paint that had a lot of metallic flake in it. It actually looked pretty good. Um, and fresh paint job on it. It had a single turbo that was converted. It did have a 6-speed manual, but it was not the original V160. It was a CD09 from a 350Z transmission. I'm sorry, yeah, it's from a 350Z, and it's paired together with like I think it's like a Collins adapter or something like that. But I saw the car, and I was like, man, how cool would that be? I mean, when you talk about iconic JDM cars, I mean, the Nissan Skyline, the Toyota Supra, RX-7 NSX, right? I'm like, man, that would be so insane to own that. And so I messaged him, and just said, hey, beautiful, um, Supra, any interest in a trade? And he said, not really, but what do you have? And then when I said I have a
Hmm.
98 Skyline, he said, what? Like he's like, how do you have that car? And then he immediately was very interested. So we jumped on a call, and it turns out he actually had a Sylvia S15, which is also a very iconic JDM car that you really don't see here, especially because the year range is kind of very similar to like an R34 Skyline. Um, so we jumped on the phone. He's like, dude, R34 is my dream car. So again, the conversation went from, hey, what are you doing this weekend, to I can come tonight. So, my wife, I should throw in that I have a very patient wife, because quite often she is thrown into the mix of this with no warning. And we have our kids and everything too. So this guy was in New Jersey, and we drove to him, and it
Wow.
was and it was quite the process, because you have to take two cars, because I had a bunch. Part of the deal was I would give him all the parts that I have. I told him about the hood
Hmm.
that I ordered. I told him I'd be willing to ship it to him. And then he had a bunch of extra parts that he was willing to include as well. So we had to take two cars. So it's a weeknight, get off work, drive to New Jersey, look at the car on a lift, everything checks out, drive it, everything's good, shake hands, and now I've now traded my Skyline R34 for a Mark IV Supra. So
Wow.
Ooh,
we're
that's
yeah,
that,
I mean it's a lot, right? So I go through that car, not go through it, but like I was able to like sell parts that he had given me to kind of get the parts that I wanted for the car. My wife is completely on board with it as long as I can contain it within itself. So it was a lot of kind of part swapping, selling things here or there to pay for other things to kind of get the car to where I wanted it. And I think by this time it was like the end of the year, and I ended up selling the Supra, and I sold it for 60. 60 grand.
Wow.
And yeah, and that was 2020. So we're
Wow.
still in 2020. That was all between February and November. It was November of
Wow.
2020 when I ended up selling the Supra. Yeah.
Well, on that note, this is a great place for us to pause for a minute because we're starting to get a little bit long on the
Yeah, I'm
podcast.
sorry.
No, no, no.
No, yeah, I
I'm
think
loving
you're
the
up to
story.
six. Did we
Yeah,
count six cars
I think it was
yeah,
probably
yeah.
six.
through the trade up?
But we're not
Yes.
done, right? We're not done.
No, we're
No.
not
Oh
done.
no.
Okay,
Oh,
so
there's so much. Yeah.
I I know that that Christian used to say this all the time. We are gonna have to have you back to finish this
Yeah.
story because I'm
And
invested now
soon.
and soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
But as we guide this beautiful podcast to the proverbial off ramp, I do want to ask because you've had so many iconic
Yeah.
cars
Yeah.
just in 2020, what is your dream car? Before we end today's episode, because we're definitely gonna
What?
have to come back and finish this trade
Yeah,
up.
Yeah.
and how long will you keep it if
There
you
you
Oh
get
go.
it?
That's
wow.
a
See,
good question.
well, man, that's a tricky one.
Yeah,
So
trick question.
my dream car, my
Hmm.
all-time dream car is a Mercedes, a 19, I think it's a 87 or 89, 190e Evo. I just, like I said, the 80s Mercedes just brings me back to the nostalgia of, growing up with those cars. But it's a manual car that was built to compete with the E30 M3, right?
Hmm.
And E30 M3s are beautiful cars as well. I think you see those a little more than you see 190 Evos. However, those cars cost more than the house that I don't own yet and probably won't own for like another 20 years or something. But that is like if I hit the lottery today, I would go buy a 190e Evo. That's my all-time dream car. And at that point, if I can afford that car, I would just keep it forever.
Yeah.
Love
I know
it.
that sounds crazy to say, but the only reason that I have to sell things to experience others is, mainly because of the financial part of it. But I mean, if I could afford that car, I would just keep it forever.
Well, I have really enjoyed this conversation, listening to
Ditto.
this amazing story where
Thank you
you're
guys.
just going from car to car. I'm jealous that of the cars not only that you've had and got rid of, but just that had a chance to drive. Like you talked about the Sylvia, the
Hmm.
R32, the R34, the Super. Like you've owned those, like
Yeah.
and driven
No,
them.
thank you.
Yeah. So I am in awe of your story. But that being said,
Hmm.
I just want to thank you for coming on. We'll make sure
Yeah.
that we're going to get all your Ken Island Cars and Coffee stuff on the in the show notes.
Hmm.
But thank you so much for being here. I'm going to
Yeah.
toss it to Doug one more time before we wrap
Thank
this
you
all
guys
up
for
and
having me.
see if he has any more questions, thoughts, and comments before we round this down.
Got I have so many, and on John's intake form, like it's just incredible. But I I can't even begin to think. But I did see, John, one of your current cars, and we're not going to talk about it. You're actually going to do a
Hmm.
manual swap on it, and I'd like you to talk
Hmm.
about it next time. But do I
Hmm.
have that right?
You do have that right? Yes.
Yeah, yep. And that's a kind of family car.
Hmm.
Did those cars ever come with stick shift,
They did
or
not.
not in
Nope.
your version, right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So you had to find somebody who had the talent, source the transmission, all those pieces, and I don't know if that's done yet, but if not, hopefully by the time we are on again, we can talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
is. It is almost done, and
Okay.
I am anticipating. I don't want to jinx myself, but maybe within the next
Hmm.
couple weeks, I'm hoping to have it back.
Wonderful,
Okay.
wonderful.
Yeah. So that's a so not only trading up cars, but trading up transmissions now. And he probably sold the old transmission to pay for the new one, knowing this guy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
No, I
Well,
appreciate that.
thank you, John. Yeah, I can't
Hmm.
can't thank you enough. I can't wait for the next episode, but also the next
Hmm.
event in hopefully March, and
Hmm.
we'll get Dave to bring his Acti, Honda Acti.
Yes.
Did I say it
One,
right,
Yeah.
Dave?
yes, you got it. The Honda Acti Street, baby. Yes,
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll bring it
olive
down
drab
there.
green.
Yep. It's olive drab with black accents, and so is my
Yep.
67 Beetle that
Awesome.
I will get working on very soon, I hope so. So that being said, I uh I just want to say thank you from us to you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. We're definitely gonna to hear the end of it. And I'm invested now. So uh, but that being said, if you want to find Instagram, it's J. Oh, hold on, let me not read it wrong. Let me not read it wrong because I don't want to screw this up for you. So
That's
J
okay.
Clock uh, on Instagram, spelled Khlok, right?
Yep, that's
And
exactly right.
then J JAYKKAY on Facebook.
Mhm.
So hit him up for his Cars and Coffee, especially in the 2026 season coming up. I will for sure.
Mhm.
Um, and for everybody in listener land, you have found the high revving, low mileage, late model, heard around the world, authoritative podcast on emotive nostalgia. I'm Dave, and I also have a Dave at carslove.com. That's Doug. You can reach him at Doug at carslove.com. You can find all of our podcast stuff on our link tree, linktr.ee/carsloved. And if you want to check out our website, carslove.com. Um, I want to say thanks again. And if there's nothing else from Doug, I just want to say I'm sure we'll see you at our next local car show, Cars and Coffee, or something of the same. And I just want to say thank you, listeners, and we'll catch you next time.